on TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV.
Good evening. Welcome to Piers Morgan Uncensored. The January the 6th congressional hearings this week have again divided America along predictable partisan lines. It was today a mob of Donald Trump supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol building in an attempt to overturn his defeat. To some, the hearings into what happened that day are political theatre, a kangaroo court bent on smearing President Trump before his likely third run. To others, they've painted a devastating picture of an irate man losing his mind and entirely unfit for the office he held.
The president said something to the effect of, "I'm the effing president, take me up to the Capitol now." To which Bobby responded, "Sir, we have to go back to the West Wing." The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, "Sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel. We're going back to the West Wing. We're not going to the Capitol."
Well, that account has already been disputed by Trump's supporters, although she said it under oath and their reaction was not under oath. What's beyond dispute is that the hearings have reignited debate about the man who's still favourite to challenge the presidency again in 2024. And ahead of the July 4th weekend in the US, we're revisiting one of the most talked about interviews of the year, Donald Trump, Uncensored. The things I'm not happy about with the presidency, I'll be completely straight with you, to your face. One of them is what happened on January the 6th, which was a result of you refusing to accept the result of the election.
Before you start this,
okay.
Look, Nancy Pelosi is in charge of security. Mm-hmm. She didn't do her job.
She's half in charge of it. So the Republicans
the mayor of D.C.
and the Democrats have equal share of that.
The mayor of D.C. and Nancy Pelosi are in charge
Actually,
of
the Republicans and the Democrats have 50-50. But she was actually cowering for terror in fear of her life that day, because there was a huge mob of people who were attacking the centre of democracy in America. I want to read you what Mitch McConnell said, who's the Senate minority leader.
Well, Mitch McConnell is
I know.
not a good representative.
You can respond to what he said, but he still remains. He remains the senior Republican.
Unfortunately.
Okay, but he is right now. Okay?
We'll see what happens.
Okay, fair enough. But he said this. He's acknowledged that Joe Biden was the legitimate winner of the 2020 election. He's rejected your claims of fraud. And he said about January the 6th, we were all there, we saw what happened. It was a violent insurrection for the purpose of trying to prevent the peaceful transfer of power after a legitimately certified election from one administration to the next. That's what it was. He told this to the Senate on February the 13th last year. Former President Trump's actions preceding the riot were a disgraceful dereliction of duty. He then said there's no question that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of that day. Yeah. And even this, he said about the rioters, they did this because they'd been fed wild falsehoods by the most powerful man on earth because he was angry he'd lost an election.
Okay. Number one, he knew nothing about what took place in the election. The press hates to write about it, but that election was rigged and it was stolen.
But you said to me once.
100%.
Okay,
I don't mean a little bit.
Right.
And you know, it's funny, when a Hillary Clinton or when Stacey Abrams says, oh, the election was rigged, nobody says anything. But when Trump says it, but the difference is I have proof, and we have massive proof.
Okay, but let me ask you
All
this
you have
question.
to do is take a look.
Let me ask you.
Take a look at the ballot harvesting that took place.
Let me ask you this.
Millions of
You said
votes.
to me once that if you talk the talk, and you're a great talker, I've seen that today, if you talk the talk, you have to walk the walk. In the context of your claim about the fraudulent election, it's been 14 months, and we've not seen this hard evidence of the fraud that you say happened.
The press won't report it. The press.
You haven't produced
This is like a communist country.
Where is the proof?
It's all over the place. We have
It's not,
so
I've read
much.
everything. Can I just put another thing to you? Because I've watched this whole debate, Ray, and you've been completely unflagging in your refusal to accept defeat. And
You know why, though? You know why? Because if our country doesn't have fair and free elections, and if our country doesn't have borders, we don't have a country.
Okay.
We have crooked, corrupt elections.
But here's what I would say to you.
And I've proven it.
Here's what I would say to you. I believe it was a free and fair election and that you lost.
You don't really believe that?
That's my belief.
All right. Well, then you're a fool.
However,
then you're a fool.
Maybe I am a fool. Maybe I'm the fool in this conversation about it.
And you're a fool and you haven't studied it.
Okay, I have studied it. Well, maybe I am a fool, but of course I've studied it. I've read a lot about what happened with the 2020 election, and I've seen no hard evidence, like I told him, that there was substantial voter fraud. Nobody has seen that. But the bottom line with all this is Trump seems to me to be fighting on the wrong hill about why he was treated unfairly in 2020. There's another argument that he could produce, which I think has a lot more merit. Just 3 weeks before the election, the New York Post published a sensational front-page story about Hunter Biden, son of the now President Joe Biden. Emails found on Hunter's abandoned laptop contained proof that he sold influence while his father was vice president. But the liberal-run social media giants squashed the scandal, with Twitter and Facebook shamefully blocking the Post's scoop. They even stopped the Post having an account. And mainstream media dismissed it all as Russian disinformation. So none of them reported it properly. And some believe that if they had done, it could have swung the election in Trump's favour. In other words, if more people had known about this story, if more people had scrutinised this story, if it hadn't been so wrongly censored, then they might have voted differently or stayed at home. I put this to President Trump. There is another twist in this tale where I think you're on much stronger ground and where I would agree with you, and that is the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, which is what it's become. And it could lead right to the top with Joe Biden. We don't know yet. But it seems to me that the way that mainstream media and the tech giants conspired to suppress that story, literally removing it from social media platforms,
17
not
points.
reporting it, not chasing it, 50 senior people coming out saying this was Russian disinformation, all complete nonsense. Yeah. There is a belief that that could have swung the election your way. In other words, when you talk about having a stolen election, actually you're on better ground, it seems to me, with the Hunter Biden laptop story.
They say it made a 17-point difference. But you know what? Even without that, I won it, and we won it big, and we won it easily. It was so corrupt in Wisconsin that they're saying, what do we do? They don't know what to do. They caught him. So only a fool, and I guess you're a fool, only a fool would think that was a legitimate...
You think I'm a fool?
I do now, yeah.
Frank Sinatra said the best revenge is massive success. Isn't your best revenge, rather than talking constantly about the last election... I
don't talk constantly, but you brought it up.
You do.
You brought it up.
Come on, it eats away at you.
Excuse me. You brought it up, I didn't. I don't talk about it very much. I do say it was rigged. Mitch McConnell is stupid, and he shouldn't have allowed it to happen. But he did. But if you look at the results, and if you look at what happened... But even you sitting here saying, well, that doesn't matter. But the law is, look, the law is, even the numbers.
Your own Vice President, Mike Pence, says you lost the election.
Mike was foolish.
The head of the Republicans in the Senate says you lost it.
Mike was foolish, and he was weak.
It's an incredible thing to say about Mike Pence, someone who was probably the most loyal Vice President and most supportive Vice President in modern American political history. But no, because he doesn't think that election was rigged or stolen, he too gets thrown under the bus. Uncensored next, Trump and I fall out over who's more honest.
Yeah, I think I'm a very honest man. Much more honest than you, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm pretty honest.
Because I don't think you're real.
Welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored. In a moment, Donald Trump's damning verdict on British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He tells me where he thinks Johnson's now getting it all wrong. And I ask him why Boris intervened to get my last interview with Trump cancelled 2 hours before it was due to start. Trump also has some scathing words for the former German Chancellor Angela Merkel and tells me why he sent her a white napkin of surrender. But first, the question that seemingly everybody in the world is desperate to know the answer to. Will Donald Trump run for president again in 2024? So here's the big question for you, which everybody wants to know. The latest poll says if the 2024 election was held tomorrow, you would beat Joe Biden by 6 points and Kamala Harris by 11 points. In other words, you would be re-elected president of the United States. So are you going to run again?
Well, you know, for reasons of campaign finance and everything, I'm not allowed to say, but let me just say this. I think a lot of people are going to be very happy.
So you won't get to vote?
I love our country. Our country is going to hell. I think a lot of people are going to be very happy.
So you're going to run?
I'm not going to say that, but I think people are going to be happy. You might even be happy.
If it's you against Joe Biden, if you win the Republican nomination again, and he runs again, would you beat him?
I believe right now, anybody, I think you could beat him right now. Our country's a mess. Our country has never been so disrespected. Our borders have never been so open. We've never had in 44 years inflation like we have at
If you run again and you win, which could well happen, and I think whoever the Republican candidate, right now, it looks like the Democrats are going to get shellacked in the midterms. It's quite likely whoever is the Republican nominee will end up being president. It could be you again. And for as many people who think that's a great idea, you'll know there are lots of people who think that would be a total nightmare.
Far less.
Far less?
I think so, yeah. I think far less. I think people are very angry at this country. They're very angry at our leadership. They wish they had their vote to do again. We didn't need their vote because, again, we won the election by a tremendous margin. We won the election actually very easily.
One of the other questions about potentially running again is you've been in that pressure cauldron of the White House with your family. They've all come under huge attack. Your children, your wife, Melania. Would you be happy to put them back in there? Would they be happy to be back in there?
Well, I won't get into that, but I will tell you they all love the country, and we did a great job.
And it's been a tumultuous time for the world, for the country. There is a chance that you're going to be running. Quite clearly, you've made that clear in this interview.
I don't think I've made it clear.
You said people are going to be happy.
I think that's it, but I think people are going to be very happy. I don't know. There'll be people unhappy, but I think people are going to be very happy.
To those who don't like you, there's people out there that don't like you. I know you said recently that you were very popular, and I think you said you were the most honest man in the world last week.
I'm a very honest man.
Was that true?
Yeah, I think I'm a very honest man. That's
but
true.
to those who don't like you...
Much more honest than you, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm pretty honest.
Because I don't think you're real.
Really?
But, yeah, I think I'm a much more honest person in most ways, in most respects.
Why am I not real?
But we're not going to get into that. Let's finish up the interview. Go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
My question was this. What message do you have to people who can't think of anything worse than you running again and will be distressed about it? Would you come back, with all the experience you've had of being president, would you come back a different person? Would you do things a bit differently?
So I like this question in a certain way because I came in and I was attacked from day one unfairly. Russia was a hoax. The impeachment hoax, number one. Number two, it was all a big hoax. The Mueller report. And I had to fight back, and I had to fight back strongly. And if I didn't fight back strongly, I wouldn't have survived. And I say it, and I say it loud. I had two jobs to do. Run the country really well, and the second was to survive. No other president went through this fake stuff.
I only ask you because when we did Celebrity Apprentice together, which I really enjoyed, and it was good. Yeah. When I did that with you, I saw a very different Donald Trump in the boardrooms for those hours every night. You were, you weren't as aggressive and confrontational.
Except I wasn't under siege with phony Russia hunts.
And by the way, I agree with you, but the Russia collusion thing was ridiculous.
No, and many others.
Right. But my point is, if you got a chance again, would we see more of that Donald Trump, do you think?
Depends on how you're greeted. But if you're greeted unfairly, you have to be tough and you have to fight. I would like that. I would much prefer that. But it depends on how you're greeted. But I would do, and I say this, our country's in trouble. something has to happen. And if it doesn't happen, and if we don't have smart leadership, you're going to end up with no world. The world is going to be blown to pieces. We have stupid people now running our country. The world is going to be blown to pieces.
But what about Britain under the leadership of Boris Johnson? And why did Johnson cancel my interview with Trump a few days before his 2019 UK election? There's some interesting answers. But first, Trump's utterly withering verdict on former German Chancellor Angela Merkel. They never got on well, and perhaps you can now understand why. You were very critical of Angela Merkel in Germany for being so energy dependent on Russia. You've been completely vindicated about Angela Merkel.
Right.
In fact, her reputation is getting shattered with every day this conflict goes on.
It should be shattered. She should have never done it. I had it out with her. I sent her the white flag of surrender. I sent her a white flag. It was in the form of a large...
You sent her one?
Oh, yeah.
I
had it brought right over to her at a different table. I said, it's the white flag of surrender. She said, but what do you mean? I said, you are dependent on Russia for energy. You must be kidding. I mean, just look at the history of Germany and Russia. When it happens, you might as well just do me a favor. Lift this flag of surrender. You know what it was? It was a very luxurious napkin. Okay?
Where was it?
And I sent it.
Where did you do it?
At one of the meetings, at one of our many meetings we had with, between the G7, the G20, you have all the different Gs. But I said, you're going to be someday in a problem with Russia, and you are going to have no choice but to surrender, because
and the new German leader has done a complete U-turn. He recognised that what you were saying then was completely correct.
But who wouldn't recognize? I also think that when she took in millions of people, she hurt Germany very badly. Millions of people flowed through Europe and flowed into her country. She hurt, instead of resettling them someplace and spending money, but settling in their area, where they would rather be anyway. The war forced them out. Bush got us into that mess in the Middle East. Bush has done a tremendous disservice. People forget.
We were supposed to meet in December 2019, just before the pandemic, in London. And at the last minute, you cancelled my interview because of an intervention from the British Prime Minister, I believe.
Well, that's true. I mean, you knew that. And I was over there as his guest. So if he asks me not to do that, I have to do that. We have had...
Why didn't he want you to talk to me?
I don't know. I didn't even ask him.
The election, the UK election, was a few days later.
Yeah.
I was told it was because he was worried that between us we might create something that may cost him the election.
Well, I like him. And I've always liked him. I think he's getting a little bit liberal. He's getting a little bit green.
What is life like as an ex-president?
Well, it's interesting. It's beautiful. It's complex sometimes. We have a lot of endorsements going out and have gone out. We've done very well on endorsing candidates that I think are very good. And they are very good. And we've taken people from who were not going to win, and now they're winning big. You're talking like somebody who feels he has unfinished business. Well, we did a really good job. We created an economy that was incredible, and now supply chain problems, inflation problems, gasoline selling for $5, $6, $7. Think of it, a gallon. When I left, it was under $2, and it was largely under $2 for a long period of time. $1.87, $1.67 at one point. And now it's $5, $6, $7, $8, depending on where you are, going up much higher. And we have a war that would have never happened if I was president. That war would have never happened. When the invasion started, you were quite praiseworthy of Vladimir Putin. You said he was a genius. This was a savvy move. That he was going in as a peacemaker. No, that's the fake news' version, no. Tell me the truth. When he built up soldiers on the border, I said, that's very smart, brilliant move, because I thought he was negotiating. When he went in, I said, no longer a brilliant move. When you see the scenes, Mr. President, of maternity hospitals being bombed, I think it's terrible, yeah. When you see refugees being attacked as they flee, grandmothers, children, babies, you see the decimation of previously prosperous cities living in a thriving new democracy. When you watch what's happening, I mean, do you agree with my assessment that Vladimir Putin is now an evil, genocidal monster? Yeah, but I also... You do? When I look at... I do, sure. Who wouldn't? What's happening is horrible. when you see rockets going into apartment buildings, and there are plenty of people in those buildings, you know, they think they're like the people who moved out. They didn't move. They want to stay because they think they're safe in their apartments. Far more people are dead than you think. When I see all the death and all that destruction, and it's such a stupid war, because you had a country that was working, had problems, lots of problems, but other countries have problems too. It was such a horrible waste to be doing it. You see swings outside, you see playgrounds, you see hospitals. It was a country. And the people were happy. I guess a lot of them were happy because they're certainly fighting for it. But I'll tell you what I really think. I say, isn't it a shame all those people are dead, all because of a rigged election? Because if our election wasn't rigged, you would have had nobody dead.
When you said to Putin, don't invade Ukraine, what was his response?
Well, I told him what our response was going to be, and his response was, really? I said, really?
What did you say your response
And
would
you
be?
know what? If he believed me, good, but if he believed me only 5%, he would have said, I'll never do it.
What did you say the response would be?
I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that, but it was a very strong response.
But did you threaten to use, for example, the nuclear capability?
I don't want to talk about it.
As he's been doing?
I don't want to talk about that. What I did say is we're going to be very strongly responding if you do that. I also said to President Xi, don't go into Taiwan. And there's going to be a very strong response. They both understood that. They both had the same reaction. Really? Really? I said, really? The thing that may keep him out of Taiwan is how poorly Russia's doing,
right,
and how vicious it has to be, how horrible it has to be, because China sees that and nobody wants to see what's happening.
So what would you do right now in Ukraine if you were the president?
Putin uses the N-word. I call it the N-word. He uses the N-word, the nuclear word, all the time. That's a no-no. You're not supposed to do that. He uses it on a daily basis. And everybody's so afraid, so afraid, so afraid. And as they're afraid, he uses it more and more. That's why he's doing the kind of things he's doing. He's doing them because he thinks nobody's going to ever attack us because they're all stupid and they're afraid to talk about it.
I totally agree with you.
Okay?
So what would you do about it?
Instead of, excuse me, it's a little complicated.
I'm sorry.
Instead of, kowtowing, instead of Biden saying, oh, he's got nuclear weapons. He keeps saying he's got nuclear. We have better weapons. We have the greatest submarine power in history.
So what would you say and do?
I would say we have far more than you do, far more powerful than you, and you can't use that word ever again. You cannot use the nuclear word ever again. And if you do, we're going to have problems.
My reading of what you've been saying is that when you were talking to Putin, when you were president, and he was talking about potentially invading Ukraine, that you threatened him with your nuclear capability.
I threatened him like he has never been threatened before.
Did you threaten to use nuclear weapons?
I don't want to say that. I threatened him like he has never been threatened before.
What's your message for Putin now, right now? If you could talk to him, what would you say to him?
I would say it's a shame what you've done. You're killing, I think potentially, look, if these people aren't smart, and they're not, our leaders are not smart. If they're not smart, you're going to end up in a nuclear war. This is just the beginning. This is the beginning. And I've been the best predictor of things ever. Now, it doesn't have to happen. It shouldn't happen. But if our people aren't smart, you're going to end up in a nuclear war.
So what's your message to him?
I think they're dealing with...
If he's watching this interview, and he will be,
look,
what would you say to him?
I think they're dealing with him incorrectly. I think what they're saying, it's almost like they're speaking with fear. And they don't understand. We have one weapon alone that would destroy everything.
Should Putin get out of Ukraine right now?
They should make a deal, and they can make a deal, and they should do it fast. When people look back on this period of time, we're going to be ashamed at what we've done or what we haven't done to stop this catastrophe. This is a catastrophe. This is, in a way, already a world war.
Has Russia made itself, with this invasion, has it made itself an enemy of the United States?
Well, I think two things have happened. Number one, they've proven to be less powerful than we thought. That's a good thing from our standpoint. But at the same time, they have a second degree of weapon that is very powerful, and nobody can be allowed to use it, talk about it, threaten with it. We have more powerful than them, and there would be no Russia. There would be no Russia, but we don't want to talk about that. But when I watch Biden say, oh, he's got nuclear weapons, we can't do this. You can't do that. I confronted Kim Jong-un And all of a sudden, I got a call. They'd like to meet. It was like, and we
When
met.
you say confronted him,
and we met in
what did you
Singapore.
say to him?
Well, verbally, I confronted him. You know that. He said, I have a red button on my desk, meaning a nuclear button. I said, I have a red button on my desk too, but it's bigger and stronger than yours, and mine works. And they said, whoa, nobody's ever talked to us that way. I took a lot of heat when I said that.
When you look back on the 4 years you were president of the United States, it was very polarizing in many ways, you know that. What do you think was your biggest success?
So when you say polarizing, I think it's more polarized now than it ever was.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. Joe Biden said he would unify the country.
Yeah.
There's certainly no sign of that happening. So I don't disagree with you. But your tenure, 4 years, give me the one thing that you're proudest of.
I can't say one because there were too many things, but I'll give you one that's a lot of people don't talk about, but then they say, wow, that's true. We started no wars. We didn't have Russia fighting in Ukraine. We didn't have China threatening every day Taiwan. They wouldn't have done it. And Russia would have never gone into Ukraine. Never. No chance.
How can you be sure about that?
I know it. I know my people, and I know Putin, and he would have never done it. I think the Afghanistan withdrawal was so incompetent with the 85 billion and the dead soldiers.
But to be clear, you wanted withdrawal. You wanted US forces out of Afghanistan.
I'm the one that started it.
Right.
I took it down.
Your complaint is about the execution of the withdrawal, not the actual decision to withdraw.
Withdraw with strength and with dignity, but I was the one that got it down to 2,000 soldiers.
How would you have done it if you'd still been president?
Number one, very simple. I would have left the military to last. You don't take out the military first. We took out our military first. A child would say you can't do that. We took the military out, and then we had thousands of people that were American people, some of whom are still there. A large number are still there, bigger than people think. I have never seen anything so incompetent. And and by the way, not only the soldiers that were killed, we have horribly, horribly wounded soldiers, and leaving $85 billion of the best equipment in the world, best military equipment
and leaving millions of Afghan women in the hands of the Taliban, who have immediately taken them back to the Dark Ages.
Correct. That's
by
gone.
Trashing their education, trashing their women's rights. I mean, that's an abrogation of a moral duty, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is.
Do you think that it fueled Vladimir Putin's ambitions with the Ukraine invasion, seeing what appeared to be America in surrender mode?
Yes, I think that was the reason. I think that's why he did it. When they saw the way we acted in Afghanistan, the way we ran, like surrendered, and again, you have to understand, I had a very strong, very powerful relationship, powerful in the sense that they respected our country and me. There was no games with the Taliban and its leader, who's still their leader, by the way. And they would have never done this.
I agree.
We ran away. He said, hey, this is no longer Trump. I'm going to go in and take you.
But let me
and then it worked out to be not so good.
Right. So the President and I didn't agree about everything as you just seen. But there were some things we did agree about, including the Duke and Duchess of Netflix. And Mr. Trump didn't pull his punches when it came to the dynamics of Harry and Meghan's relationship.
This is Talk TV.
Trump and I didn't always see eye to eye on everything in our interview, but one thing we did agree about was the royal family. The former president didn't hold back, calling Harry whipped, lavishing praise on the Queen, and giving his thoughts on the future of the monarchy and the Prince Andrew scandal. But first, I started by asking him about that historic state visit.
You know, I met the Queen.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be for 20 minutes.
I saw you just after you saw her.
Right. It was supposed to be just a quick meeting. And it was beautiful, the pomp and ceremony. Nobody does it like the English. I don't know what it is, but nobody does it like
We have a certain,
But
style.
I met her, and it turned out to be more than an hour, substantially, because she liked me and I liked her. And she's let it be known she liked me, and I let it be known I
I've
liked
had
her.
other members of the royal family tell me they enjoyed your company.
We had a great time, and then they honored the United States, but they honored me that night, which is really the honor of the country. And it was at the top level, and I sat next to her. We talked the whole night. And somebody said, we've never seen her smile so much. We had a great time. She was laughing and smiling. They said they've never seen her have such a good time at a state dinner. You know, normally they're a little boring. Okay, this wasn't boring. So I have a lot of respect for the Queen. She's incredible. She loves her country. I think she's incredible. Look at her. She's been Queen for, 70 years or something, and she's never made a mistake. Even when the guy broke into her room, sits him down, talks to him, quietly does what... Everything she's done. Now, some of the kids, it's, they make a little mistake every once in a while, sometimes a big one.
What did you make of
this
the
woman,
Prince Andrew scandal?
Well, it was a terrible thing. It was a, terrible thing. I think terrible for a lot of people. But the Queen, I don't know, has she ever even made a mistake? She's an incredible woman. I'm not a fan of Meghan.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. And I wasn't right from the beginning.
What did you make of
I
what
think
she and Harry said
I think
to
poor
you?
Harry is being led around by his nose. And I think he's an embarrassment.
Here's my issue with it. I think that they've quit the country. They've quit royal duty. They're living in luxury in California.
Yeah.
They want to use their royal titles to exploit them for massive financial gain without any of the duty that comes with the royal titles. I don't think you can have your royal cake and eat it. That's my argument about it.
So I want to know what's going to happen when Harry decides he's had enough of being bossed around, or maybe when she decides that she likes some other guy better. I want to know what's going to happen when it ends, okay?
You think it's going to end?
I do. I've been a very good predictor, as you know. I predicted almost everything. It'll end, and it'll end bad. And I wonder if Harry's going to go back on his hands and knees back into the beautiful city of London and say, please, I think Harry has been led down a path.
I found it when I heard he wasn't going to Prince Philip's memorial service.
Terrible.
I found that. I couldn't believe that.
Yeah,
that he would not go to that. He was at the Super Bowl. He was at a Texas rodeo, but he couldn't find time to get on a plane
I
to
think
Philip's
that was a
memorial.
terrible thing. Many terrible things. That might have been, as you mentioned it, that might have been the worst of all. Because he was, like her, he was a tough cookie too. I remember years ago, Prince Philip came to New York, and we were in the Plaza Hotel, and there were many people wanting to meet him, and we were all taking a picture with him, many people, and the photographers said, I'll never forget this. He was tough. The photographer said, please move back. There were like 30 of us. And he said, no, you move back. And that was simple. I said, that's pretty good. This guy's tough. But I'll never forget that. I don't mean that in a derogatory. I mean it in a good way.
Yeah.
Instead of having this whole group of people moving back, plenty of room, the photographer, and he immediately moved back. I said, wow. I mean, the Queen had to be pretty tough because
I think she was,
he was tough.
When he died, I think it was a devastating moment for the Queen.
I think they had a great relationship, but he was a strong guy. I never forget, a little moment, right? He just said, no, you move back. And he didn't say it in a nice way because the photographer was pushing everybody around a little bit foolishly. But I thought it was terrible when he didn't go to the funeral of Prince Philip. Yeah, I think the Harry situation is going to unfold in a much different way.
If you were the Queen, is it at the stage now, would you remove their royal title?
I would. The only thing I disagree with the Queen on, probably one of the only things ever, is that I think she should have said, if that's your choice, fine, but you no longer have titles, you no longer... And frankly, don't come around. You just... Because her loyalty is to the country. She said that many times. Her loyalty is to the country. And I think that he has been so disrespectful to the country And it's a great country. I own a lot of things there. I own a place called Turnberry.
You do?
And in Aberdeen I own. And I mean, we have, Aberdeen is beautiful, the oil capital of Europe. And I own things there, and I love that country. It's incredible. It's Scotland. I love Turnberry. I love what I did there. I built things there.
It's a great golf course.
And I respect one of the best in the world. And I will tell you, she is more passionate about her role and the country. It's going to be very interesting. Someday she won't be there.
Right.
It'll be very interesting what happens. And I know Charles pretty well. And I think Charles...
And Camilla, I think you sat with her.
I do. And I'll tell you what, she was on my right, the Queen was on my left, and I said, Queen, I really have to talk to Camilla for a little while, too. You know, we couldn't break apart. And I talked to Camilla, and Camilla was so nice. You know, different than I thought. She was funny, she was smart, quick.
I really like her.
She was great. I like her, too. And I like Charles. I mean, he's serious.
Do you think they'll make a good king and queen when that time comes?
I hope so. I think it's going to be tricky. He's going to have to be.
Yeah, it is.
You know, it's going to be tricky because they are truly replacing. You talk about a legend. I mean, this woman, she's got to have the all-time record of any country. Is she the
greatest? I mean, in your lifetime, is she the greatest of all the leaders of any kind?
Well, so my mother was born in Scotland,
yeah.
And I remember as a little boy. Anything where the Queen was on, anything at all where, and it was the pomp and ceremony, but my mother had tremendous love and respect for the young Queen at that time.
Well, you would have been a kid when she got coronated, right?
I was
in the mid-50s.
Yeah, but my mother wouldn't leave the screen.
Amazing.
And she'd go back to Scotland almost every year. You know, she loved Scotland, but she loved the Queen. And so does everybody. And for this person to come along and criticize the Queen is just, you just can't do that. So it'll be interesting to see how it all works out. Harry is whipped. Do you know the expression whipped?
I'm familiar with the phrase.
I won't use the full expression. But Harry is whipped like no person I think I've ever seen.
The most whipped man in the world.
I don't know, that's going to be a big one, but he is a whipped man, yeah.
There's been much speculation about whether Donald Trump stomped off out of our interview. I plan to resolve that tonight and show you exactly what happened. But before all this, do you remember the most talked about TV walkout before? Because that involved me.
Has she said anything about you since she cut you off? I don't think she has, but yet you continue to trash her.
OK, I'm done with this.
No.
Sorry, no.
Sorry. Do you know what? That's pathetic.
You can trash me, mate, but not my
No.
See you later.
I'm being...
Sorry, can't do this.
This is absolutely diabolical behaviour.
It certainly was, by him. But shortly after that, I lost my job for having an opinion, and President Trump, it turned out, watched it all go down.
Let's talk about censorship. My show is called Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Okay.
You like the title?
I like it, yeah, very much. I know you very well.
You've known me a long time.
For you, it's a good title. I don't think you can avoid it.
No.
So it's an accurate title. I don't think if they told you to behave yourself, you can't. So
Exactly.
It's probably a very accurate title.
I chose the title because I lost my last job.
Yeah, I saw that.
At the Good Morning Britain show.
I thought you overreacted, by the way.
Well, I'll tell you what happened.
I mean, the guy was a stiff.
Oh, no, it wasn't about him.
You didn't have to do.
It wasn't actually about the walkout. So here's
you
what
made it about him. He probably got a nice raise.
You're right about that. But here's what happened. So I watched the Oprah Winfrey interview with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, and I'm angry watching it. I think
and you were right to be.
I thought the attacks on the royal family were disgraceful.
I agree.
And unsubstantiated. I'm calling them a bunch of...
By the way, I agree with you.
Right.
I'm a big fan of the Queen.
So let me ask you what you would have done then. So then it turns out Meghan Markle writes to my boss at ITV and basically demands my head on a plate. Yeah. And the next day I'm told I've either got to apologise for disbelieving her or I had to lose my job. Now, what would you have done?
I would have left, but I wouldn't have attacked the weatherman. You know, he wasn't worth it.
Well, I didn't attack him. I left the room.
Well, you did. No, you attacked him. He attacked you, and then I would have handled it differently, but that's okay, you know.
But would you have apologised? I've known you a long time. Would you have apologised?
Well, I thought you were right about the thing. I just didn't like the way you handled it. Is that okay?
I think you're not wrong about. I shouldn't have walked off.
I don't know if you're going to leave this on your interview, but
we're going to leave it on the interview.
Okay, good. I mean, I don't want to insult you.
The show is called Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Yeah.
You're allowed to have your opinion. Part of what happened to me was this issue of censorship and free speech. You've had a taste of this by being removed from Twitter, which was a great platform for you. You were very popular on it, and you were very entertaining on it, depending on your viewpoint.
Yeah.
I liked you on it, I miss you on it. It used to cheer up a boring day.
And Twitter is now boring.
Well, do you miss being on Twitter?
So I'm doing my own platform. I think it's going to be very big. I think it's going to be very successful. We'll see. But we need a voice. The good news is I have a voice because I do interviews with you and other people, some friends and some not friends of yourself. Some you know very well, right? And some you respect a lot and some you don't. But I'm able to get my voice out. But Twitter, what they're doing is really horrible.
Well, there are two things they did, which I think are really contentious. One, they've continued to ban you from the platform, but they allow Vladimir Putin to have a Twitter account. They allow the Supreme Leader of Iran to have a Twitter account. They allow a number of Taliban leaders to have a Twitter account. I don't see how they can square off allowing those people to have their platform,
you know why?
But not a former President of the United States.
Do you know why? Because they're sick. They're mentally ill. I really believe that. They're sick people. And our country is going to hell. Right now, our country is going to hell. We have people, we have an invasion at the southern border and beyond, but we have an invasion coming in. This is bigger than any army is coming in. And it's not 2 million people. I believe it's 10 or 12 million people a year. At the end of Biden's term, I think you'll have 30 to 40 to 50 million people will have come into our country. Many of these people are not people that would ever qualify for any country. Many are people released from prisons from other countries. You know, last week we had 129 countries represented. It's no longer Honduras and Guatemala and Mexico and, you know, the area. They think like, oh, they're coming in from El Salvador. It's now, the whole world is being dumped into the United States. We're like a garbage dump. And this is allowed to go on. And the media doesn't want to talk about it. If you turn on to NBC fake news or CBS fake news, any of them, CNN, which is, you know, totally fake, if you turn on to, they don't even talk about the border. They rarely talk about the border. Such an important thing, and they rarely talk. Our country is being invaded, and we do nothing about it. I believe, and we'll finish up with this, but I believe our country has never been at a lower point. We had the strongest border in the world. We had the strongest border we've ever had. And now we have the weakest border. We had the best economy, and now we have inflation that's destroying. You know, inflation, if you're like in real estate, like I am and was, if you're in real estate, inflation is a wonderful thing until everything explodes.
Here's the big...
Uncensored next, Trump's answer to a simple question. What is a woman? And I'll show you how our interview really ended.
Turn the camera off. Very dishonest.
How much do you think the cancel culture woke debate is now beginning to really damage the Democrats? And I'll give you the example that's been raging recently, this whole issue of transgender athletes in sport, for example, in women's sport. Leah Thomas, the swimmer. I think it's grotesquely unfair.
It is.
You know, you can support trans rights to equality and fairness, but also understand that what's going on in sport is inherently unfair and unjust and unequal. Is that your position?
People see it and they won't put up with it. They had a weightlifter where the record was for 11 or 12 years, and they'd put a half an ounce on each side, and the woman would lift. A guy comes along and breaks the record by numbers that you wouldn't.
Boris Johnson came out recently and said he would ban biological males, people born with biological male bodies who transition. He would ban them from then competing in women's sport.
Good.
Do you agree with that?
I do. I agreed with it long before anybody else. I think it's ridiculous, and it's sad, and it's bad for the Democrats because they're not going to do that.
One of the big questions being put to lots of politicians right now is, what is a woman?
I'm not going to respond to the question, but a woman is somebody that swims at a certain time and doesn't get beaten by 38 seconds by somebody that wasn't even a good swimmer as a male.
Now, how could I not talk about exactly how our incredible interview finally ended? After all, it's made global headlines because apparently the promo was rigged. Donald Trump himself issued 2 statements branding it fake news. Well, here's what really happened.
I was pleasantly surprised that you came out and said that you'd not only been fully vaccinated, but you thought other people should be too.
Well, we saved tens of millions of lives. Maybe this would have been the Spanish flu of 1917 had we not come up. And I got it done in 9 months as opposed to they were projecting from 5 to 12 years. I got it done in 9 months, so I'm very proud of it.
You were great.
I'm against mandates, strongly against mandates, but I'm very proud of what we did. I saved worldwide tens of millions of lives.
One last question. Do you accept that early on in the pandemic that you didn't take it serious enough, or you were being told how serious it was?
No,
but
I don't accept.
You weren't sharing that with the American people.
I'm a cheerleader for this country. I want to be positive for this country. I take everything seriously, and I took that very seriously. But I'm a cheerleader for the country, and our country came out of it better than anybody else. We've done a great job.
My final question, President Trump. It's been good to catch up with you after this lengthy time. I haven't mentioned...
That's it.
No,
Last question 4 times.
No, I realise that. I realise that I'm not like...
Very dissent.
I just haven't asked you
You're
about...
very dissent. This was a 20-minute interview.
Well, sorry.
Listen, this was a 20-minute interview.
Don't you think?
I think it's fine. It's fine.
I haven't asked about...
It's fantastic in your opinion.
I wanted to end with the hole-in-one. I just haven't asked about the hole-in-one. Do you want to...
Go ahead. Go ahead.
You recently got a hole-in-one playing golf with Ernie Els, one of the great golfers of the world. What was that like for you?
Well, it was great. He's a great guy, great player, one of the most beautiful swings, they say, in the history of golf, and very powerful. And I made it with him and actually 3 other tour pros, and it was quite a thrill.
Talk me through the shot.
Well, I hit the ball. It was hit well. It felt good. The wind was blowing hard into my face. It was a 5-iron that went 181 yards, and it went clank right into the hole. It landed on the green in 1 bounce, and it went clank. And Ernie, who's a low-key guy, one of the reasons he's acceptable, the Big Easy, right? But Ernie and the other pros started jumping up and down in the air. And I said, why are you guys so excited? He says, because we don't see hole-in-ones. They make, I guess, 1 every 3 tournaments, and then you have to be in the group. So it's rare.
Have you held one before?
I've had 7. This was the 7th.
7 hole-in-ones?
Yeah, 7. This was my 7th, which isn't that high a number, believe it or not. If somebody plays golf, I hear the record is 49. Okay, people.
Did you buy a round of drinks in the bar afterwards?
I don't know, but I would certainly have been happy to.
Well, you don't drink.
I don't drink. No,
it is traditional. You buy a round for everyone.
That is true. That is true.
Did you do that?
Probably happened. I didn't check, but probably happened because I own the club. I'm sure it happened.
Congratulations on the hole-in-one.
All right, thank you very much.
And thank you for a great interview.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go.
That was a great interview.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Turn the camera off. Thank you, sir.
So there was the most explosive interview of the year, and that was the first one we did on Piers Morgan Uncensored. It's already triggered 4 separate presidential statements of fury from Donald Trump. And yet, as things stand, he still remains one of the favourites to run again for office in 2024. And if he was to win again, it'd be the second person in history to become president for a second time. Quite extraordinary if that was to happen. Whatever you're up to this weekend, make sure it's uncensored tonight.
What was my biggest career moment? After spending about 25 years at Fleet Street, there's loads of stories I could tell you. But actually, I think I did an overnight show for Talk Radio in the early days, the night of the Brexit referendum. And that was actually quite a milestone because, of course, we started off thinking that Remain had won. And at 2:30, 2:45, after Nigel Farage had already said he'd lost, it turned out he hadn't lost. And it turned out we were leaving the European Union. So that was quite a shocker.
This is Talk TV News.
Good evening, I'm Emily Rose Adams. Tory MP Chris Pincher has been suspended by the party after being accused of drunkenly groping two men during a night out. The former Deputy Chief Whip resigned yesterday after an incident in which he said he embarrassed himself and other people. COVID infections have surged by more than 30% in the last week to almost 2.3 million. It's thought to be driven by two new subvariants of Omicron, and in Scotland 1 in 18 people are currently infected, but they're not thought to be any more lethal than other types of COVID. And British hopefuls Cameron Norrie and Heather Watson have reached the fourth round at Wimbledon for the first time. Novak Djokovic has also eased through to the next stage as well. That's all for now. We'll have more updates after the talk.